Okay, so my name is Michael Brenner, and on behalf of the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, the Gen Ed program, Alicia, I'd like to welcome you to the second public lecture series of this course. So I also want to begin by thanking our sponsors who are listed up there, who have helped us really all in many different ways. So the Harvard University Faculty Development and Diversity, Office of the Senior Vice Provost, Cole Palmer, Le Creuset, Mars Chocolate of North America, Asade Business School, Whole Foods, who's actually provided, who's donated all of the food for the laboratories of the course, Alicia and Jose Andres' Think Food Group. And on behalf of them and all of us, we want to welcome you here. So the way, so I'm going to get this started in the following way, and I'm going to try to describe how these public lecture series are going to go. So the plan is the following, that basically in every lecture, either myself or Dave Waits, Dave, stand up, who is another lecturer in the course, is going to give a very brief, say less than 10-minute, this is our goal, discussion of what the scientific theme was in the course for this week, just to give you some flavor of that. Now in doing this, we're both a little bit nervous because we fully realize that you don't want to listen to us, you want to listen to Joan. And so this is, being a warm-up act, of the highest order. But nonetheless, we feel compelled to show you something about the science that we're doing in the course. And so I hope that you'll at least humor us. So the topic of the first week of the course, which started which started on Thursday. This was the first week after the introduction, was called Phases of Matter. And in every week of the course, and so actually I already said this. So the structure is that, I already said this. At the end there'll be Q&A where you can ask Joan. So the structure of the course is that every week in the course we have a one-slide summary of everything that we're doing in the course. And this is the one-slide summary of the first week. The theme of the week is the idea that molecular interactions determine the phase behavior of molecules. And we also have a number of learning objectives that we're trying to communicate to the students. The first of which is one that I think was very well documented in the last public lecture, which hopefully some of you heard, which is that scientific principles can be used to explain all the phenomena of cooking. Some of them are complicated and others are not. Then our scientific objectives are first to understand what phase behavior is and how to read a phase diagram. And I will very quickly show you guys a phase diagram. We will then talk about how chefs use phase diagrams to manipulate foods, and Joan will demonstrate this in great detail. And finally, we emphasize the connection between the phase boundaries on phase diagrams and the way that materials are organized. So every week we have an equation of the week. We're not going to have enough time here to explain to you every week's equation of the week. But what? Don't we clap? Oh, right, that's right. Good point, Dave. So we don't have enough time in the public lecture series to explain the equation of the week. However, we do have a tradition in the Harvard College class that we started this week, which is that whenever you see the equation of the week, you have to clap. And we also have a recipe of the week. And this week, the recipe of the week, which the students are making now, I guess not right now, but made all day in the labs, is pressure cooked custard. Okay, so I'm going to start this with the way that we started the class. So the question is, what is cooking? And the sort of running joke is that the instructors, at least part of the instructional staff of this course, doesn't know how to cook. And so we had to look up what cooking was. But this being Harvard, we looked it up in the Oxford English Dictionary. And what it says in the Oxford English Dictionary is that cooking is to prepare food to make ready for eating by application of heat. Now, this is a very narrow definition, and any of you who heard what Farron described on Tuesday, a week from today, realize just how silly this definition is. But anyway, being scientists, our job at the moment, at least, is not to criticize the definition, but instead to recast the definition in a scientific way. And so this is the way that a scientist sees this definition. You see, there is a line. The line is as a function of temperature. And according to the Oxford English Dictionary, cooking is the idea that there's some critical temperature when a food goes from being uncooked to cooked. And the sort of prototypical example of this is the egg, which when it's at room temperature is uncooked, but if you heat it up, it cooks. Now, in the lab, our students have made measurements to measure exactly the temperature at which eggs cook. Indeed, this is a constant temperature water bath at 63 degrees Celsius, which is the temperature, I believe, at which one makes a perfect egg, or at least it's close to the critical temperature at which one makes a perfect egg. That is, it's close to the line on this diagram. But anyway, you can do experiments to measure that. And so that's the phase diagram of the egg. Now, what we would like to understand is why the phase diagram looks like this. That is, why is it that when you heat things, it goes from being uncooked to cooked? What is it about the material that makes that happen? And so what we did in the class this week was to start out with something which was very simple, that had the same type of behavior, namely water. And you all know that when you heat water, it transforms from being a liquid to a gas. You also know that if you cool water, something else happens, which is it becomes a solid. Now, if you think about this in light of the phase diagram of an egg, you can realize how peculiar an egg is as a material. Because what happened in the egg is that it went from being a liquid to a solid as you increase temperature. It did exactly the opposite thing, right? Whereas water goes, when you heat it, from being liquid to gas. An egg, when you heat it, goes from liquid to solid. Now, in the class, we actually did a demo for the students, which I'm not going to do for you here. I'm going to do another demo, which is we took a vat of liquid nitrogen, which is what this is. And we took an egg and we put it into liquid nitrogen. And when we did that, the egg also became a solid. So that was illustrative. OK. So now here's the phase diagram of liquid nitrogen. And what you'll notice is that whereas water becomes a gas at 100 degrees Celsius, liquid nitrogen becomes a gas at minus 195 degrees Celsius, which is very cold. So this is a vat of liquid nitrogen, and this is where everyone should get nervous because I'm a mathematician, and mathematicians are not supposed to do things like this. But so if I pour, this table this is liquid. This is why you're all nervous. So if I pour the liquid nitrogen on the table, it will go from being a liquid to a gas because the temperature here, and so let me now do this demonstration for you. Hopefully I will break nothing. My computer no longer works. See, we survived somewhat. OK, everybody's good. So that was a liquid-gas transition that happened in liquid nitrogen. OK, so many materials have this behavior. And then finally, this is my last thing. I'm almost done. I'm going to go back to the main show. Can we go back to my slide? Oh, there's my slide. So this is the phase diagram for water. So the phase diagram, as chefs use them, not only depend on temperature, but also depend on pressure. So we're at a pressure of 1 atmosphere. But if you use a pressure cooker, as our students did in lab, then you go up to higher pressures. And that allows you, when you boil the liquid, for it to go to higher temperatures and to cook more efficiently. If you lower the pressure, as Joan will show us in this rotaval, then you can actually boil at even lower temperatures and thus control the heat that you're transferring to the material. And so this is what I just said. So chefs use tools to manipulate phases. This is a picture of the custard that was made in lab. This is a 4-minute custard. 4-minute custard. The challenge of designing this lab was to design something which pressure cooked in a short enough amount of time with a noticeable enough difference from normal cooking that you could do it in the lab. That was the challenge. So the time of the custard kept changing. That is it. We fed it to Joan this afternoon. So now he knows that we don't cook very well. So that's that. So there's a rotaval. And OK, so let me just say one more thing, and then I will stop. So this is phases of matter. In order to understand how chefs manipulate food, and this will appear, it appeared both in Farron's original lecture, and it will appear going throughout this class, this public lecture series, one needs to know why different materials have the phase diagrams they do. So for example, liquid nitrogen becomes a gas at a lower temperature than water, and one wants to know why, because only by knowing why can one learn how to manipulate them. And so there's a fundamental idea for this, which is that basically determines the phase behavior of materials, which is the materials are made of molecules, and the interactions between the molecules determine the phase behavior. And I'm going to demonstrate this to you quickly using a movie that Daniel Rosenberg of the lecture demo staff here made for us. So this is a movie. And so this is a solid. And what I'm going to do is start increasing the temperature. Hopefully this will work. If it doesn't work, it will just be sad. Oh, I have to push the run button. Good point. Thank you, Daniel. Okay, here we go. So now I'm going to increase the temperature. No, there's no sound. This is boring here. So actually, I'm just going to increase the temperature this way. So let's see. Let's apply. So this is 0.1 Kelvin. So I'm going to make it like, let's make it 100. Okay. Now the molecules are going to start jiggling. You see they're jiggling, but it's still a solid. It's still a solid. You can see because they're all stuck together. So let's increase the temperature more. So now let's make it 1,000. Wow, this is going to be so great. And see, now they're coming apart. It's certainly a liquid, and it may even, they're still condensed. So now it's a liquid because the molecules are moving by each other. And finally, I'm going to do one more, and then I will turn it over to the main show. I will stop this nonsense. 3,000, how about that? That should be high enough. And now it's a gas. And you see in this movie, what's so great about this movie is that it really shows explicitly what's happening at the phase transitions. The molecules are sticking to each other. When it gets hot, they unstick, and they fly everywhere. And that's what's controlling the phases of normal matter. It, of course, does not explain the egg. Now, we will explain the egg, but we will do that next week. That's Dave's job next week, who will explain to you the egg. OK, so with that, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to introduce Sylvia. Where's Sylvia? From Asade, who's going to introduce our main star, in fact, our star, namely Joan Roca. OK.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sylvia Svejanova, and I'm delighted to welcome you on behalf of Asade Business School. And also, I'm really pleased to introduce Joan Roca. When I asked him this afternoon how to introduce him, he was pretty eloquent, and what he said is, actually, I'm a chef. Full stop. And I thought, given that I was given 5 generous minutes from the organizers, I thought I should dig a little bit more. And coming from a business school, I thought a framework will kind of be needed to organize my thoughts. So here is the T framework on Joan Roca. And T is the textures, given that we are in a textured environment. So I would like to mention just 3 milestones. One is triangles. And apparently, the life of Joan is really bounded by triangles in many different ways. And I will tell you about a few of those triangles, mysterious as they are. From triangles, we'll move on to tradition. And we'll see where all this comes from. And it will be probably in the genes. Then we'll go on techniques. And where I would like to leave us on without further ado is in the more. And more is what Joan will be showing us tonight. So triangles. I hope you could appreciate several kind of triangular shapes. Joan is not any chef. He's the head chef of a place called El Cellar de Can Joan. El Cellar de Can Joan is a 3-star Michelin restaurant, but moreover, it is the 4th best restaurant in the world. So it's a very, very, very special place. And if you are already hungry and kind of excited about it, make sure you factor in half a year if you want to do a booking tonight. That's how far you will need to book in advance. If you appreciate, there is a sign which is a triangle. Actually, the restaurant is shaped as a triangle. But also, if you look at the upper end, the sign of the restaurant, it's not any letter R. It has 3 legs. And where do the 3 legs come from? Well, they come from the 3J, and 3J stand for Joan, Giuseppe, and Jordi, or said differently, the savory, the liquid, and the sweet mind. 3 brothers who have connected and balanced their energies. They complement their thoughts, they complement their ideas, and in the flow, or in this harmony, as Joan would describe it, all these concoctions kind of naturally happen, somewhere in between this magical space of the triangle. So far for triangles, T for tradition, and you have to know that there are long roots to the cooking of the 3 brothers. And actually, the pillar of it all is right in the middle of this picture. It's Montserrat Fontanet, who is the mother and who is also the person who had this traditional, and she still has it, this traditional Catalan cooking restaurant, where Joan, at the tender age of 11, started messing with dishes and kind of making culinary experiments. So it's all in the genes, if there are kind of scientists of other walks here. T for technique. When we were talking about what is Joan's cooking about, he was saying, yeah, it is about technique, but actually technique is to be in the service of. And what is it in the service of? In the case of Joan, it's in the service of emotions. And you can have, I mean, I'm not sure if you can appreciate, but this is a very elaborated and important graph which shows how you kind of change your emotional states. And all these techniques the three brothers have invented are in the service of these emotions. And just to connect it with the lecture from last week, you may remember, those of you who attended last Tuesday at the Web Drama Center, Harold McGee was showing this oyster that was kind of transparently surrounded by something, and that was not champagne, it was not even cava, it was something that had a flavor of earth. And this is another of the magic that the three brothers have brought to the culinary world and to the foodies. What you see, like this dish represent, if you talk to Joan, he would tell you this is the nostalgia. You have this earthen flavor, which kind of brings this kind of emotions to mind. Of course, they are a fun place, so they cover the whole range. So what you see to the right is actually Jordi, remember the triangle, the youngest brother, and Jordi is holding something which is called the goal of Messi. I don't know how many of you are football fans, but that's definitely an important milestone. And actually, if we have a zoom in, you will appreciate there is a grass part of the dish, so that as you progress, it's a dessert, as you progress through the dish, you will have the scent of the grass, but you will also have the exactly reproduced trajectory of the ball which Messi used to score the goal in a match against Getafe. What's interesting and what kind of demonstrates how important this impish sense of humor is, actually Jordi committed to this dish to the media way before they had created it. So the media, being excited about the goal of Messi, started asking, so how does that dish look like? 6 months down the road, they had it and presented it to society. With this and more, I just want to share with you two projects or two aspects of Joan that I believe are very important. One is he's cooking up a new project that has to do with a vegetable and fruit garden that will kind of produce products that can have their own room in the cooking of El Celler Can Roca. So it's about caring about the terroir, locality, and identity. At the same time, another thing he insisted on, all this has been possible of this generosity of Spanish chefs who have shared a lot among themselves. And just to give a vivid proof of all that and connect it with our last week's speaker, what you see here, it's a boat. And this is in Hyde Park, London, and this is right at the time of the ceremony of the Restaurant magazine, where all these chefs made it to the top of the ranking. And you see 3 generations of Spanish cuisine. You see Juan Maria Arzac, of course, to the left. Then you see Joan, and then you can remember Ferran Adrià from last week, and Antonia Duris, who is kind of the next generation. So a nice illustration of how Spanish chefs together kind of row in the same direction, having a lot of fun. And without further ado, and all expectation, handing over to Joan Roca for his magic. Thank you.
Moltes gràcies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bueno, abans de res, demanar disculpes per no poder fer la classe en anglès. El meu anglès és catastròfic, per tant, la Mercè em traduirà.
Mercè is going to interpret. Hello, everybody.
He pensat fer avui una classe diferent a la de demà.
A different type of class from tomorrow.
Per poder tenir registres...
So as to be able to have different...
O explicar registres diferents de la cuina que fem al restaurant.
Regarding the cuisine we do at our restaurant.
Són imatges del restaurant i dels 3 germans, tal com ha explicat molt bé. El restaurant que veieu és el treball de molts anys d'esforç. Potser la característica més important a destacar és el celler, la bodega, és sensorial, té diferents espais Es pot percebre a través de música, és a dir, d'imatges, de so i de
Where there
tactes,
is music,
zones vinícoles.
images, and
Zones vinícoles, regions de vi.
different wine regions.
Això són imatges de Girona, de la nostra ciutat i
These are images
de
of Girona,
l'entorn
our city,
de
and the
l'entorn de
town,
Girona en el que estem,
and the surroundings.
que estem enclavats i que
Where we
forma
are.
part important
And it's a
de
very important part
la nostra cuina, és a dir, el nostre
of our
territori i
cooking.
l'espai que ens envolta.
The surrounding, the physical space that surrounds us.
La idea és explicar
The idea is to explain
conceptes creatius que per nosaltres són importants per desenvolupar plats.
creative concepts that for us are very important to create dishes.
Ho fem ordenant aquests conceptes
We do.
de forma que intentaré explicar-ne uns quants només per no extendre'm molt i no fer-ho molt excessivament llarg, sinó que ens concentrarem en uns quants conceptes
We have some kind of order for these
que són
concepts. I'm going to
són
explain
els que
some
hi ha
of them because there's a lot of
pantalla.
them.
Tradició,
There's the
cuina del vi,
tradition,
la
cooking
perfuncció,
with wine, perfume
fum
cooking,
i la cuina
a
dolça
smoke and sweet cooking,
i el paisatge.
and the landscape.
Okay. Tots aquests conceptes intervenim tots tres, els tres germans, d'una manera o d'una altra, tots tres acabem aportant
The three of us,
coses en aquest procés
three
creatiu.
brothers, contribute somehow to these concepts.
Okay. Tradició. El primer pla,
First, tradition.
la millor manera d'explicar la tradició és explicar exemples, és a dir,
The best way to explain tradition is to use examples.
el primer exemple que veureu és com fem un plat de bacallà a partir d'un concepte d'una sopa tradicional de bacallà.
And the first one is we're going to make a soup, and the starting point is a traditional soup with cod.
En el que l'important, al marge de la composició del plat, que veureu diferents elements que intervenen, és la consecució d'una textura del bacallà
And the important thing, apart from the way the elements are distributed, is the texture of this cod.
que ha estat cuit al buit a baixa temperatura per aconseguir una melositat i una textura molt determinada.
That it's cooked in a vacuum in a very low temperature and to achieve this precise texture.
Okay. La diferència d'aquest plat que veureu aquí amb el tradicional és que en el tradicional tot es bull alhora i no hi ha una textura diferent per cada producte, sinó que tot acaba tinguent la mateixa. És a dir, i normalment el peix, el bacallà, es bull. Per tant, la textura no és igual que aquesta, ja que aquesta l'hem cuit a part, buscant una temperatura adequada de cocció.
There's a difference between the way this dish is traditionally cooked, because all the ingredients kind of boiled together, so the texture becomes basically the same for each ingredient, and the way we're going to do this new way we do it, then everything retains, because of the temperature, its essential texture of the one we want to achieve.
Yeah. També veurem en aquesta recepta com fem uns nyoquis de patata, com busquem una altra textura d'un nyoqui en el que substituïm la farina per el kuzu, que és una fècula de tapioca. No?
In this recipe we're also going to use gnocchi, but gnocchi are going to be made in a different way to get a different texture, because we're going to use a kind of starch called, excuse me, Joan, called
Kuzu.
Kuzu. It's a Japanese corn starch.
Sí.
I understand.
És una fècula que aconseguim fer que un puré de patata amb una miqueta de llet, el que dissolguem el kuzu, tingui una textura molt especial.
So by dissolving kuthu,
Això és el kuzu.
This is the kuthu, and you dissolve it
El dissolem amb aigua
with water,
per afegir-lo a un puré de patates.
and you add it to a kind of mashed potato puree.
I així poder fer uns nyoquis molt diferents en el que sobretot el que hi ha és una textura molt especial, no? molt cremosa.
And then we get this gnocchi which have this very peculiar texture which is really creamy and different.
Aquest puré de patata el que fem és estirar-lo sobre una placa.
This mashed potato puree, we kind of spread it out
Tallar-lo
and we cut it.
I afegir-lo a la sopa del bacallà, que és un caldo.
And we add it to the cod soup, which is kind of broth soup.
Aquest és el bacallà cuit al buit, que el que té és aquesta textura que pràcticament es desfà. Ha estat cuit a 55 graus durant 4 minuts.
This is the cod that has this interesting texture, and it's being cooked in a vacuum at 50 degrees temperature, 50. 4 minutes, durant 4 minutes? For 4 minutes.
Ja. Això són els nyoquis de patata que hem vist abans.
These are the gnocchis, the potato gnocchis that we've seen before.
En el plat també hi hem posat un estofat de tripa de bacallà, de fet és la bufeta natatòria.
And we've also put what we call cod tripe.
I una terrina de brandada amb macarrons.
And then a terrine of macaroni and brandada.
És una emulsió de bacallà amb oli d'oliva.
It's a mixture, emulsion of cod and olive oil.
Okay. A taula servim la sopa,
We
que és
serve
un caldo de les espines i les aletes del bacallà.
the soup, which is a broth made of the bones of the cod and those espines, did you miss?
Espines i aletes, les ales,
And
les aletes.
the fins, thank you.
Okay. Aquest és un exemple d'un plat que ve de la tradició com a concepte i que acaba sent un plat diferent on hem prestat atenció a la cocció del bacallà, al muntatge de la terrina amb els macarrons, a la intervenció d'aquesta tripa que dona una textura diferent, és a dir que hem construït un plat a partir d'un concepte de tradició.
So we have, our starting point was a very traditional dish, escudella de bacallà, and this way using the vacuum, cooking it in a vacuum, we've achieved these different textures, and also by manipulating the different foods, we've got also this presentation and different
El següent plat també és un plat que ve de la tradició i en aquest cas el que busquem és reproduir una combinació tradicional de la memòria, sobretot, en aquest cas més cuina de memòria, intentem reproduir un plat que menjàvem quan érem petits, que ens preparava la nostra àvia, que era un xai amb pa amb tomata.
Yeah, this next dish, it's also, it's like a memory. It's called memory cooking. Somehow it's like a recollection of the past of this kind of food that we used to eat when we were children all the time.
El més bo, el més interessant del xai era la pell que quedava daurada quan el fèiem a la brasa o a la planxa, quedava daurada, i això és el que més ens agradava i per tant és el que teníem a la memòria.
And the most interesting thing about this is precisely the skin, which was brown, and it was the tastiest part and what we like the most. So that was what stayed in our memory.
Per aconseguir aquest xai, el que fem és coure al buit 63 graus durant 24 hores al bany Maria.
So what we do is we cook the lamb at 63 degrees in a vacuum and in a bath, like a double boiler.
Quan el tenim cuit, agafem la part de la pell
And then we take the skin off.
i aquesta pell la deixem a la planxa de crom.
And then we put it on the chrome grill.
Per aconseguir una galeta,
To achieve
una galeta cruixent.
a kind of crunchy cookie.
Això és el pa, un pa de pagès,
So this is bread. This is some kind of peasant bread, we
sucat
call
amb
that.
tomata i oli, tal com ho fem
You know,
tradicionalment.
with oil and tomato. We wrap the tomato on it. It's what we
Molt
traditionally
clàssic, molt
do.
tradicional a
It's
Catalunya.
very traditional, classic.
Llavors, aquesta pell sobre una planxa de crom la deixem que quedi cruixent, que es faci una galeta,
And then we let it, we put it on this grill, it's chrome grill, and we let it be until it's crunchy, like a cookie.
ja. I el que fem és col·locar el pa amb tomata al mig de dos pells de xai.
And then we place the pan tomata, the tomato with the tomato, bread with the tomato in between, in the middle, sorry.
Ja. I després tallem això per aconseguir dos peces per poder menjar inclús amb els dits,
And then,
tal com ho menjàvem nosaltres quan érem petits, ja que nosaltres l'àvia ens tallava amb unes estisores la carn i el pa amb tomata i ho anàvem agafant amb els dits.
and then we cut it because that's how we used to eat it. Somehow when we were children, you know, our grandmothers would cut the meat, with scissors really small, and then we would eat it with the pan tomata, with the bread and tomato.
És un alioli però amb alls escalivats, alls cuits al forn i muntats amb oli.
This is an aioli, but we do it with grilled garlic that we bake in the oven.
Ja. Una compota de tomata amb comí,
And then a compote of tomato and cumin.
escarola amanida amb el suc dels ossos, fem un caldo amb els ossos del xai.
And then we do a kind of broth with the bones of the lamb, and that's the dressing actually.
Ja. I el llom del xai, que l'hem reservat, no l'hem cuit al buit, sinó que l'hem cuit al moment, sobre la planxa.
And then the loin of the lamb that we've reserved, and we cooked it at the end on the grill.
Okay. Aquest doncs, és el xai amb pa amb tomata, que el que nosaltres pretenem és que la gent el pugui agafar amb els dits i menjar-se com si fos allà fem... És molt tradicional els cortes de gelat, no? Que hi ha la galeta i el gelat al mig, doncs això és la mateixa forma, el mateix format, però de xai i pa amb tomata. No?
So what we do is we present it this way because we would like people to just use their fingers and eat it like that, as we used to do, and as we also do when we eat ice cream, which is very typical in our area, to eat the ice cream just like that with two cookies and the ice cream in the middle, and we just take it with our hands and eat it.
Ara veurem un plat que ve de la tradició, en aquest cas de la cuina gallega, és un pop a la gallega.
This is also another dish. It's also a traditional one that comes from Galician cooking from Galicia.
Ja. Però fet amb productes catalans, es diu calamar i calamarsets.
But it's made with Catalan products, which are squids, like little, it's called calamarsets, which is similar to small squid.
Sí. I del que es tracta és d'unir aquests elements, és a dir, el calamar El pebre vermell de la vera, pimentón de la vera,
And then you have to, the idea is to
és
mix these
una espècie de
ingredients.
pols de pebrot, de xile,
And there's
de
this
pàprica.
kind of pepper, paprika from Chile.
I el que fem és crear un recipient nou.
And then what we do is that we create this new bowl or
Plat.
container.
Sí. Dins del bol hem posat el pebre vermell,
We've put the red pepper in the bowl.
calentem una brutxeta per tal de soldar aquest plàstic. Hem estirat un plàstic film a sobre d'aquest bol.
We've put a film of plastic on it, and we had to warm it up.
Extraiem el que sobra, diguéssim, l'excedent,
Then you just get rid of the leftover plastic.
i al mateix temps hem aconseguit soldar a la part de
It's
sobre
kind of
aquest fil.
melted.
Hem fet un petit
the
forat
top. There's a little tiny hole that we made.
a sobre d'un puré de patates amanit amb oli d'oliva
And there's some kind of mashed potatoes with olive oil.
i deixem caure uns petits daus de calamar tallats molt petitets
And we drop some very
i
tiny
amanits amb pebre vermell.
dice, and these dice are made of this little calamari, squid, and pebre vermell, has dit?
Aquest pebre vermell de la
And this
vera és una mica
paprika.
fumat.
Which is a little smoke
Ja?
from la vera.
Això ho col·loquem a sobre d'aquest recipient
And then we put it on top of the container.
i ara hi posarem a sobre uns calamars petitets.
And then we're going
a
to
la
put
planxa.
some of this little squid.
Això és una salsa de tinta del mateix calamar.
And this is a sauce made with this ink of the squid.
El que volem ara és reproduir la sensació de fum que té el pebre vermell
Now we want to reproduce this sensation of smoke that the paprika has.
ja. I per això utilitzarem una pipa,
And that we're going to use a pipe.
que és el que hem fet ara. Hem col·locat fum a dins d'aquest recipient
So we've inserted
perquè
smoke
quan comencis a menjar, cada vegada que menges,
so you know, every
apretis
time you
i
start
apareixi el
eating,
fum.
then it's-
És una idea de buscar la complicitat entre el fum, entre l'olfacte i el gust.
it's the idea of finding the complicity between smell
vino.
and taste.
Ok. Sí. Una altra part important dels punts de partida dels nostres plats és la cuina del vi.
Another important
Tenim la sort de tenir en el
ingredient
nostre
is
equip
wine.
en Josep, el nostre germà mitjà,
Josep is a second
gran
brother,
expert en el
and
món
he's the
del vi.
expert in wine.
Això és un exemple, són unes ostres al xablís.
These are oysters, Chablis oysters.
El xablís és un vi que és una regió de la Borgonya francesa,
Chablis is a wine from the Bourgogne.
que té una terra molt calissa, molt blanca, té unes pedres blanques en el terreny,
It grows in a land with kind of white stones, lots of calcium.
i ara estem fent uns candis. Estem barrejant almívar i aiguardent de mel d'acàcia.
And now we're doing some changes. We're mixing some honey, mel
Mel d'acàcia, miel d'acàcia,
acacia.
és un arbre,
It's a tree.
és un aroma, és una flor de l'acàcia.
It's a flower, acacia.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ok, estem posant aquesta barreja d'aiguardent de mel d'acàcia
Acacia honey.
i almívar
And
dins
syrup.
de petits
So we're inserting that
forats
in these little holes.
voltats de maicena.
And there's maicena. Maicena is a kind of starch, cornstarch.
i ho deixem secar.
and we let it dry
Unes 2 hores,
for about 2 hours,
uns 100 graus, per tal de
100
que
degrees,
surti el sucre, va cap a fora i a dins queda el licor.
so that the liquor stays in and the sugar comes out.
I aconseguim fer petites pedres blanques
And then
per
we
simular
manage-
el paisatge de Chablis.
And we managed to get these kind of white stones to relate that to the landscape of Chablis.
Vale. Estem reproduint els aromes dels vins de Chablis.
So we are reproducing the aromas of the wines from Chablis.
La mel d'acàcia era un,
And the acacia milk was one of them.
i un altre aroma és la terra.
And the other aroma is the earth.
Per això utilitzem el rotovapor per poder captar l'aroma volàtil de la terra.
And that's why we use this machine to kind of capture the flying aroma of the earth.
Ja. I per això estem destil·lant a temperatura baixa,
And that's why we're distilling at very low temperatures.
a 55 graus aconseguim que bulli aquesta infusió de terra i aigua
At 55 degrees, we manage that to boil,
perquè aquest aparell modifica la pressió atmosfèrica
because this machine modifies the atmospheric pressure.
i per això bullim, condensem, és a dir, evaporem i condensem i precipitem
And that's-
l'aroma de la terra a través d'aquesta aigua destil·lada.
That's why boiling, and we manage to get the aroma of this earth, this mixture.
Tenim el destil·lat de terra, tenim l'aroma volàtil de la terra i ara ho convertim en salsa amb una mica de xantana.
And now we're going to turn that into some sauce with a little bit of chantano.
La xantana permet
Chantana.
tenir densitat,
Them gum. Thank you.
permet tenir densitat en fred, sense haver d'escalfar.
You don't have to warm it up, it's cold.
Ja? Llavors tenim per al plat les pedretes de mel d'acàcia, tenim
And
el destil·lat de terra,
So we have the stones of acacia honey and the distilled earth.
tenim un concentrat d'ostra, una salsa d'ostra,
And we have this concentrated oyster sauce.
el Chablis, els vins de Chablis tenen notes també molt particulars a poma, a tòfona.
And then the wines from Chablis also have this taste of apple and truffle,
Apple, Granny Smith, no?
Granny Smith.
La poma àcida.
the acidic
Hem posat
part-
oli de tòfona,
apple.
poma Granny Smith,
So we have oil of Granny Smith oil
també
and
té aromes de
truffle
xampinyó cru.
all these different aromas, also of raw mushroom.
Ja?
All these aromas are included.
I l'ostra, que és l'element que combinem amb el vi de Chablis.
And the oyster, that is the element that we combine with the wine from Chablis.
Després col·loquem les ostres tallades i repartides per poder-los integrar bé amb tots aquests elements de
Then we cut the
condimentació.
oysters so that they are totally integrated with the different ingredients.
Les pedres que hem fet amb l'aiguardent de mel d'acàcia
And the stones that we've made with the acacia milk, honey, sorry.
i a taula servim aquest plat amb una crema de fonoll, un
And
velouté de fonoll.
we serve this with cream made with fennel.
Okay? És un plat que parteix de les ostres i el Chablis. Les ostres amb un vi de Chablis combinen fantàsticament bé i és per això que hem agafat el Chablis com a element creatiu i busquem totes les notes olfatives per reproduir-los en el plat i combinar-lo com a elements que composen finalment.
So the important elements are the wine. We serve it with the wine from Chablis and also the oysters and we try to use these elements and preserve the aroma, the smell of that area as well.
Okay. Ara veurem com aquesta idea del vi com a punt de partida també ens va bé per poder convertir el vi en una salsa i utilitzar el vi com a element conductor d'una sèrie d'elements que es combinen entre si. És a dir,
And we're also going to see how wine is going to be used also. It was going to be the starting point, and it's going to be used to make a sauce. And it's also going to be like the main element to
musclos...
produce a different dish.
Ok, però... Espera. Vale. Veurem uns musclos al Riesling, però també una ostra al cava.
We're going to see oyster in cava,
Sí.
and some mussels in Riesling.
El vi es converteix en salsa afegint-hi xantana.
Wine becomes a sauce when you add chantana.
Però
Setengam. Sorry.
en el cas del cava,
Sorry, apologize.
en el cas del cava, el que fem és anar a la bodega per introduir la xantana dins de l'ampolla de cava quan es fa la segona fermentació.
So when, regarding the chantana, would you mind repeating that again?
En el cas del cava,
With the cava, sorry.
el cava és com el xampany,
It's like champagne.
per tant té carbònic endogen, té carbònic propi, que es produeix amb la segona fermentació.
That with the second fermentation is produced.
Ja. Llavors nosaltres volem convertir aquest cava en una salsa.
And then we want to make it into a sauce.
Ja. I per això anem a la bodega i quan ha fet la primera fermentació el cava ja ha produït carbònic, el que fem és treure la mare.
And that's when we went to the winery, then we get rid of the mara.
Sí, els sediments de la fermentació.
Of the rest, the sediments of the fermentation.
Ja. I introduïm a dins la xantana.
And then we insert the xanthan gum.
Ja. I això té 9 mesos d'envelliment fins que s'hidrata la xantana i converteix el cava en una salsa.
So that stays for 9 months until the xanthan gum gets hydrated and
Després servim l'ostra amb una ampolla de cava tallada per la meitat.
We serve the oyster with, that's a bottle of cava cut
amb compota de poma a sota. És una poma, en aquest cas és una Royal Gala, una poma menys àcida.
It's a Royal Gala, a little tart.
Pell de llimona confitada.
And then lemon skin.
Pinya fresca.
Sweet, and then fresh pineapple.
Curri.
Comí. Cumin.
Són aromes del cava.
These aromas are cava's aromas.
I aquest és el cava que s'ha produït a la bodega.
And this is the cava that we made in the
que amb la xantana
winery.
queda més dens i per tant reté el carbònic.
And then it retains the gas.
El carbònic puja molt lentament.
The gas raises very slowly.
I es reté, per tant, en boca, sents com exploten les bombolles de carbònic.
And then in your mouth, it stays in your mouth, and you can feel the bubbles boiling up.
La cocina del vino. No, aquí. Aquest és un altre exemple,
This
també
is another example.
en què és molt més fàcil convertir un Riesling, un vi de Riesling, de la varietat Riesling de la zona del Rin alemany.
And this time we're using Riesling wine from the German area.
En què el vi és la salsa.
And then the wine becomes a sauce.
En aquest cas és molt més fàcil convertir-lo en salsa perquè no té carbònic, només l'hem de barrejar i això ja ho podem fer a la cuina nosaltres.
It's easier to make it into a sauce because it doesn't have gas. And we can do that in the kitchen easily.
Doncs està a sota, posem els musclos a sobre.
So it's underneath, then we put the mussels on top.
Són 6 musclos.
The 6 mussels.
Cada un tindrà un aroma del vi.
And each of them will take one aroma of this wine.
Una maonesa de bergamota.
Mayonnaise of bergamot.
Yes. Compota de poma i jasmí.
Jasmine and apple compote.
Cilantre i llimona.
Cilantro and lemon.
Roses.
Roses.
I nectarina.
And nectarines.
Pètal de rosa caramelitzat.
And caramelized rose petals.
Terra, destil·lat de terra.
And then this distilled earth.
I oli de tartufo bianco del Piemonte.
And oil from El Piemonte. From a truffle kind of oil.
És una seqüència. Aquest plat el servim,
This is a sequence.
el servim des de la bergamota fins al final.
So we serve it from the bergamot to the very end.
Per tal de tenir la seqüència en què un vi evoluciona. Un vi de Riesling vell evoluciona.
The sequence of how a wine, an old Riesling wine, evolves.
Primer notes les notes florals, fruites, bergamotes.
First the floral
I al final notes els aromes de terra i d'hidrocarburs que tenen aquí, que és l'olor de la trufa blanca.
The earth and then the last the aroma of the truffle. That will be the last one.
Ahora vamos al otro. Siguiente. Ok, ara veurem una altra manera d'utilitzar els aromes del vi.
Now we're going to see another way of using the aromas
en aquest
of
cas,
the wine.
el que farem serà utilitzar els aromes volàtils quan s'evaporen amb una cocció.
So we're going to use the volatile flying aromas when they're used when we cook them.
Sí. Nosaltres, quan... Ok, gamba amontillado. Quan nosaltres a vegades cuinem, tirem vi,
when we cook, we put wine in the pan.
I els aromes volàtils se'n van.
And the aromas just go.
I el que fem ara és, amb una cassola, amb un sedàs, col·loquem una gamba, en el fons de la cassola hi ha un amontillado, que és un vi de Jerez.
So at the bottom of the saucepan there's un amontillado, which is sherry wine, wine from Jerez, and we cover it in plastic.
Ho hem posat a coure i, per tant, en aquest procés s'han desprès els aromes volàtils i s'han fixat en la carn de la gamba i l'han cuit lleugerament.
We cooked, and so these volatile or flying aromas just stick to the prawn, and then they give it add it a taste.
El plat el composem amb elements relacionats amb en aquest cas és ceba, són uns aros de ceba, també els veurem després en un altre plat, és ceba confitada, feta un brou i després convertida en una textura gelatinosa a través de l'agar-agar.
We also use this caramelized onion, these onion rings, and it's made with a broth, and then you get a kind of a texture which is gelatin-like.
L'amontillado té notes d'avellana, de pell de taronja.
And then the amontillado has these nuances of hazelnut skin and hazelnut and orange skin.
Val. Doncs aquest és un altre exemple, però en aquest cas utilitzant l'aroma com a element de combinatòria, però també com a element de cocció i de fixació de sabor.
So this is a way of using aroma, to combine, but also to use it to cook and to be an element that fixes the taste.
Amb aquesta mateixa reflexió, el que fem és aprofitar l'aroma que desprenen les espècies quan es torren.
In the same way, we use the aroma of the spices when you toast them.
I el que fem és posar el mateix sistema, fins i tot el plat s'assembla molt, perquè eren dos plats que varen coincidir i que tenen la mateixa base.
So these are very similar dishes. They have the same base, kind of coincided.
Però en aquest cas el que fem és aprofitar l'aroma de la torrefacció del curri.
So we're using the aroma of toasting curry in this case.
Sistema similar.
It's a similar system.
En aquest cas no hi haurà vapor, hi haurà fum.
There's not going to be steam, there's going to be smoke this time.
Tapem igualment el cassó amb el film.
We cover the saucepan with a plastic film.
I el que es produirà és una cocció molt lleugera.
And the cooking is going to be very light.
I fixarem l'aroma del curri sobre l'escamarlà.
And then the aroma of the curry is going to be on the escamarlà. Escamarlà is similar to little lobster, prawn lobster.
Okay. Tindrà aroma de curri, però no tindrà curri directament.
Okay, so this will not have curry in it, but it will have the aroma of the curry.
Són els mateixos aros de ceba, reproduïm aros de ceba, però és una mena de gelatina calenta, ja que hem fet, és el mateix que hem explicat abans.
This is, again, onion rings with this hot gelatin.
Okay, s'ha fixat el sabor de l'aroma.
So the taste of the aroma stays.
I el que fem és amb els caps dels escamarlans, fem una velouté, una salsa.
And then we use the heads of the little lobsters to make some sauce.
És lligada amb rovell d'ou.
And then you use some yolk.
Yeah. I això és una espuma de comté, formatge comté.
This is like a foam made with comté, the cheese.
És un formatge que té notes de curri i de nous quan és envellit.
When it's old, it has some nuances of curry and curry.
I a nous.
And walnuts.
Així posem oli de nous.
So we also use walnut oil.
Ja. I aquesta seria la combinació a partir del curri, del formatge comté, de la ceba,
so that would be the
les
combination
anous. Okay.
Between the curry, the walnuts, and
seguint aquesta mateixa idea dels aromes, buscarem ara un altre concepte, que és el del fum i la cuina dolça.
Still using this same concept of aromas, we're going to move to smoke and sweet cooking.
En aquest cas, el que buscàvem era poder portar fins a la taula el fum de la brasa.
So we wanted to, serve this smoke from the brasa,
el foc,
from the fire,
barbecue.
from the grill.
I llavors necessitàvem un contenidor del fum.
So we needed a container
Sí.
for the smoke.
Aquest plat és anterior al dels calamarsets que heu vist amb el fum.
Right. This dish was before the one you saw was done with the little squids.
Yeah. Llavors, el que intentàvem era reproduir un gelat de ceps a la brasa.
So we wanted to reproduce, to elaborate an ice cream, a ceps ice cream grilled.
Yeah.
Ceps are some kind of mushrooms.
Esteu veient com en Jordi fa un caramel.
And now you can see like Jordi is making this caramel.
Quan el sucre i l'aigua han arribat a 150 graus,
So when the sugar and the water reach 150 degrees,
hi ha afegit unes gotes d'àcid cítric
he's added some drops of citric acid
per aconseguir tenir flexibilitat, elasticitat amb el caramel.
so that the caramel is elastic and you can manipulate it.
I el que fa ara és anar-lo estirant, anar-lo satinant,
So he stretches it and folds it, and
perquè el que volem fer és una bola molt fina de caramel.
because we want to do a really thin ball of caramel.
És una tècnica que abans s'utilitzava només per ornamentació.
It's a technique that it was used before only for decoration,
Per fer flors, per fer
For flowers.
formes.
shapes.
I en Jordi va començar a utilitzar com un ingredient, com un element més per la cuina immediata.
And Jordi started using that as an element for immediate cooking.
Llavors, un cop tenim aquest sucre satinat, fem petites peces,
So once we have this sugar, polished sugar, we make these little pieces,
i aquestes peces les convertim en una bola a través d'una petita pera que va inflant amb aire,
and then we make them into balls using this device that blows air. Y entra aire, no?
ja, és la mateixa tècnica que la del vidre.
It's like you do it's like what they use for glass.
Ja.
Glass blowing, yeah.
Amb un ventilador fixa,
So
Quan
there's this
dona
fan
fred, quan ja està format,
that fixes it when it's cold and it has the right shape.
escalfem aquest tub
So you
amb
warm
un
this
soplet
tube
i escalfem un
with
tub,
a souffle,
per extreure l'excedent de sucre.
and then to get rid of the extra sugar.
Ja. I tenim boles transparents
And
de
then you get
caramel.
these transparent balls.
Ja. El gelat de ceps a la brasa.
So this is the ice cream, the ceps grilled
Aquesta és la
ice cream.
pipa amb la llenya
This is the pipe.
d'alzina.
With alm,
Col·loquem el
oak.
fum a dins.
so
I
we
això ho
put
portem a taula.
and that's how we serve it.
I es porta el fum. Quan tens l'olor de la brasa,
When you get the smell of the charcoals,
l'olor transmet una sensació de benestar, de confortabilitat, d'estar a prop dels teus, és una olor relacionada.
this smell becomes also a memory.
reculliment.
It's like kind of comforting aroma of you're sitting cozily with your people you love.
I alhora prepara per trobar-te després un gelat que és fred,
And then it prepares you to try a cold ice cream that comes next.
però que té gust de cep a la brasa. Són ceps cuits a la brasa amb els que després fem un gelat.
But it tastes like ceps, these mushrooms, grilled mushrooms that you use for the ice cream.
Okay. Albercoc. Okay. Ara veurem com amb la mateixa tècnica podem reproduir una fruita, no? Una peça.
We can see how, using the same technique, we can come up with the fruit or reproduce the fruit.
Farem un albercoc.
So this is going to be an apricot.
És la mateixa tècnica, el mateix procés anterior.
It's the same technique, it's the same process as before.
Però en aquest cas busquem aconseguir la màxima similitud a una fruita, no?
But we want it to be as close to a fruit as possible.
I en aquest cas utilitza doncs, una paleta per donar la forma d'un albercoc.
This tool to shape the apricot.
Yeah. Val. Quan tenim la forma,
And now when you have the shape,
el que fem és pintar amb colís de gerds.
we paint it with kind of
Raspberry.
raspberry coulis.
Vale, amb una pistola, un compressor.
And then, you see this pistol.
Una pistola, un compressor de pintura. No? Per donar el punt de maduració.
Gun.
Per donar el punt de maduració
It's to get to the right point of
i el suc il·lustre per donar la textura. La textura de la pell. No?
And for the texture of the skin.
Ja. Quan tenim ja la forma i el color i tot d'un albercoc,
Once you get the shape and the form of the apricot,
el farcim d'una espuma d'albercoc calenta.
then we fill it in with foam,
A mousse.
like a mousse of apricot.
Ja, això és un colís d'albercoc molt
It's a
concentrat.
coulis of apricot, very concentrated.
Aquest colís d'albercoc el fem amb el rotavapor, concentrant el suc. Fem un suc i el posem aquí per tal de concentrar, treure aigua i concentrar el gust.
We juice it to extract all the water and just get the essence of the juice.
És un albercoc
Using that machine.
perfecte
The perfect apricot.
i la gràcia és que es trenca i dins està la... Tot això ve, com dèiem, de la cuina dolça que intervé dins la cuina salada.
All this comes from the sweet cooking that also comes together with the savory cooking.
Hem fet albercocs, hem fet remolatges,
We've done apricots, we've done beets,
hem fet boniatos.
yams. Oh,
Per tant, hi ha elements d'aquest sucre bufat que tenen, són plats dolços i n'hi ha que són plats salats.
so some are savory and some are sweet dishes.
Per tant, aquesta idea d'utilitzar la tècnica de la pastisseria dins de la cuina salada ens dona molt de recorregut.
So it's this idea of using techniques from sweet cooking into savory cooking, and that goes a long way.
I un exemple seria aquest que veureu ara, que és un torró. Un torró és una elaboració de pastisseria en la que substituïm elements, la mantega per foie gras.
And this is This is called turró. Turró is
nougat,
traditionally
un
a
nougat.
very sweet thing, and we're going to change it into a foie,
Sí.
right? But the starting point is turró, which is a totally sweet.
Fem un foie gras al poêlé, foie gras
This is-
a la paella,
It's grilled,
foie gras, sí.
foie.
I
O in
un
a
cop
soft- in a saucepan.
està cuit, el que fem és triturar-lo amb elements d'un torró, és a dir, amb mantega de cacau.
El tritureu. Primer el
Sí,
tritureu.
sí.
And then, so you warm it in the pan,
Juntament, amb mantega de cacau,
and then with peanut butter, cocoa butter, thank you, and cocoa
Puré.
butter and ¿qué
un
més?
puré d'avellanes, una pasta d'avellanes,
And then there's a kind of hazelnut paste.
un
puré.
praliner d'avellanes,
Praliner.
és a dir, avellanes amb caramel,
It's hazelnuts with caramel,
i això ho triturem, val? Anem
and
a
then we
donar-
grind it.
Fem una emulsió amb
And
calent,
we make this emulsion.
és a dir, introduïm aire a través de l'emulsió a
So-
tota aquesta base grassa.
We introduce air to this emulsion, and
Un cop triturat,
once
amb un bany maria
Blended.
fred,
it's in this cold bath,
donem, amb un turmix donem aire, és a dir que
and then we give it air with this blender.
ja,
To
i
remix,
això ho col·loquem a dins d'un motlle de torró petitet. No?
and then we put it in these molds of turró, little ones.
Li donem, ho allisem,
Then we flatten it,
ho congelem
we freeze it,
i ho desmotllem congelat
and then we take the mold out when
You-
it's
i ho
frozen,
pintem amb xocolata amb mantega de cacau.
and then we paint it with chocolate and cocoa butter.
Val? Li donem una capa molt fina a través de la pintura de cacau.
There's a really thin layer of cocoa on top too.
L'acabem amb una reducció de Pedro Ximénez, és un vi dolç de Jerez.
And then we use a reduction of Pedro Jiménez, which is a very sweet wine.
Vale? Això és soja,
This is
brots de soja amanits amb soja, amb salsa de soja.
Soy sprouts and dressed in soy sauce.
Hem fet d'un dolç un plat salat.
So from a sweet dish, we've made it into a savory dish.
Una gota de Pedro Ximénez,
And then a drop of Pedro Jiménez.
reduït en el rotabal també,
It's reducing the rotabal, the machine.
un paper d'or,
And then a gold
Gold.
paper.
Okay.
Gold.
és a dir, és un plat que surt d'aquesta relació entre la cuina dolça i la cuina salada.
So this dish comes out of this relationship between savory and sweet cuisine.
Ara veurem un plat que és una idea d'en Jordi quan va fer un curs d'alta geladeria artesana amb un dels millors pastissers, amb un dels millors geladers del món.
So this dish, actually my brother Jordi came up with it after taking a course with really high mastering cuisine in pastry, not in pastry, in ice cream making, a real great master chef.
El professor els deia, aneu amb cuidado perquè els gelats absorbeixen un 25% d'aire a la seva estructura.
So their chefs said careful because ice cream actually absorbs 25% of its structure.
De molècules d'aire, quan es munta, perquè un gelat sigui bo ha de tenir aire. I si l'aire de l'obrador està viciat, agafarà l'obrador de l'espai on es treballa.
Because if the air is contaminated, because the ice cream absorbs air.
Aromàticament contaminat.
I mean, aromatically contaminated.
Doncs el gelat agafarà aquests aromes.
Then the ice cream is going to absorb these aromas.
Llavors, ell quan va arribar a casa,
so when he got home,
quan va arribar a casa es va posar a fer un gelat
he started making an ice cream
i fumar un puro.
And he started smoking a cigar.
I el que va resultar és que vam tenir un gelat amb gust de fum de puro.
It turned out we got this ice cream with the taste of cigar smoke.
A l'olor.
Taste of the aroma of the cigar.
I va resultar molt interessant. El que passa és que el puro que havia agafat no era bo.
It was really interesting, but unfortunately the cigar was not high quality.
I vàrem buscar el millor cigar possible per captar-ne l'aroma.
We found the best possible cigar to be able to capture.
Llavors, en Jordi va reproduir un cigar amb xocolata, és el que ara està fent, està treballant la xocolata, l'està homogeneitzant.
So that's he reproduced this cigar and he used chocolate and that's what he's doing now.
Crec que d'això us en parlarà Enric Rovira.
I believe Enric Rovira is going to talk to you about that.
De xocolata.
About chocolate.
Bé, el que fa doncs és homogeneitzar la xocolata.
So
I a través d'aquest paper, fer un cigar.
And then that becomes a cigar. It would be like the paper layer.
Enganxa la cobertura, no? De xocolata.
And then you take the cover.
I això ho refredem.
Then you cool it.
Volem reproduir això.
We want to reproduce that.
Però clar, el que no podia ser és que en Jordi estigués fumant tota l'estona mentre feia el
But Jordi could not be smoking all the time while cooking.
I per això vam fer aquest invent.
So that's what we came up with this device. And this is a balloon.
És un globo amb una... Hi posem el
So we
puro.
Insert the cigar.
I així aconseguim que això vagi fumant.
And that's how we manage for it to keep,
Som una mica MacGyvers a casa.
Som una mica què?
MacGyvers. Es diu?
Com ho dius això? We're a little MacGyvers at home.
Llavors, mentre es va mantecant el gelat, va absorbint aire,
the ice
va
cream
absorbint fum.
absorbs the air, so absorbs the smoke.
I així aconseguim tenir una base gelada.
And then we managed to get this frozen base.
Amb el gust
Taste
de l'aroma del fum.
Of the aroma of the smoke.
És un joc perquè quan tens a la boca aquest gust, no estàs acostumat a tenir-la a la boca, estàs acostumat a tenir-la en el nas.
It's like a game because when you have this in your mouth, you're not used to it. I mean, you're used to having it in your nose, so it's kind of exciting.
Farcim els tubs de xocolata.
Com?
farcim
we fill in the chocolate tubes.
un extrem el tanquem amb xocolata
Then we close one of the ends. Chocolate.
i l'altre el banyem amb sucre negre,
And the other,
sucre
we bathe it
carbó
with,
de sucre, no sé si aquí es coneix.
carbó de sucre. Well, we call that carbó de sucre. It's a sugar that is black.
Ja.
This is
Xuquem
it.
perquè sembli cendra.
And it looks like ashes.
Aquest sucre el barregem amb espècies que tenen relació amb el tabac, amb l'aroma del tabac,
And you mix it with spices that are related to the aroma of
i ho
tobacco.
servim amb un cendrer
And we serve it on an ashtray
perquè el puguis menjar amb els dits, agafat amb els dits.
so that you can use your fingers and eat it with your
I
fingers.
l'acompanyem amb un mojito,
And then it comes with a mojito.
que és un postre fet a partir de la beguda típica
It's a
cubana.
dessert made out of the drink.
Ja. Però és un pa de pessic de rom amb una sopa de llima,
So there's a lime soup with
ram biscuit, ram biscuit,
rum biscuit
i un sopa de llima,
and lime soup.
perdó, sí, i granissat de menta.
And mint slash, granizat,
Granit.
sorbet,
Sorbet.
sorbet slash,
Candis de rom,
rum candies,
com els que hem fet a la nostra xablís, aquells candis.
like
però
the
de
ones
rom.
we did before with the chablis, the oysters,
Ja, aquelles pedretes
the
blanques.
the little stones, the white stones,
Ja, i mel de canya.
The?
Mel de sucre de canya.
and honey made of sugar cane.
Okay. Seguim. Paisatge. El paisatge és una altra font d'inspiració. De fet,
Well, the landscape is one of the main sources of inspiration.
hem dit que aquests són alguns dels conceptes que nosaltres estirem per desenvolupar plats.
We said before that these are some of the concepts we use and stretch to include them in our cuisine.
Ara veurem una gamba que en reproduïm el seu entorn.
And we're going to see a prom, and we're going to reproduce its surroundings,
Volem
its environment.
fer sorra amb gust de gamba.
We're going to make sand that tastes like
Okay.
prom.
Per aconseguir fer aquesta sorra, el que fem és utilitzar maltodextrina,
And to come up with this sand, we use maltodextrina, which is
és un polisacàrid que el que fa és absorbir...
kind of is sucre?
Sí,
It's like a sugar
absorbeix l'oli
that absorbs oil,
que hem fet amb els caps de les gambes.
the oil that we made using the heads of the prawns.
Vale? I aconseguim una textura que sembla sorra.
And then we come up with the texture similar to sand.
Això és una brasa de llenya d'alzina que tenim en el restaurant, que
This is
l'utilitzem per coure la gamba,
brasa.
en aquest cas.
coals. Brazier.
Una barbecue.
It's the barbecue.
Yeah.
And the wood is oak, home oak.
La gamba l'hem cuit a la barbacoa, a la brasa,
So we cooked the prawn in the barbecue,
i sobre la sorra aquesta que hem fet amb la maltodextrina anem col·locant algues,
and on this sand we put some algae,
salicòrnia,
algae and Salicornia.
Salicornia és un arbust que creix molt a prop de les marismes, dels aiguamolls.
It's a bush that grows in marshes.
I també hem fet uns petits merengues en forma de coral de plàncton marí.
Okay, and then we did some kind of merengue that looks like coral reefs.
I ara utilitzem el rotovapor per concentrar un caldo de caps de gamba.
And then we're going to use the rotovapor, the steam rotor, to make using
en aquest cas no volem el resultat de la destil·lació, sinó que volem tenir una manera de reduir un suc sense temperatura alta.
We want to reduce the sauce without a high heat, right?
Sí, no volem que es produeixi la reacció de mallar, no volem que es torri i
don't want
volem
it
que
to
es redueixi a temperatura baixa.
We want it to be reduced to a low temperature.
És això, és un concentrat de suc de cap de gamba reduït fins al màxim.
It's made with the heads of the prawns again, and it's reduced as much as they can.
Per tant, té molta intensitat de sabor,
So it's very intense. I mean,
però no s'ha torrat.
very strong flavor, but it's not been browned or toasted.
Okay. És el sistema d'utilitzar el rotovapor per reduir té sentit quan volem que no hi hagi torrats, però és per això que utilitzem la temperatura baixa al rotovapor, podem reduir un brou o un vi a temperatura molt més baixa i així agredim molt menys el suc que estem reduint.
So that's why we use the steam rotor when we want to use very low temperatures, so as to get the desired sauce or essence.
Ho fem amb el suc de l'albercoc, amb el suc del cap de la gamba, amb el vi, amb el pedro
We do
ximeno.
it with the wine, with the sauce, the juice of the prawns, and also with the apricot juice too.
El que passa és que amb el vi el que sí tenim aquí és l'alcohol. L'alcohol.
But we have with wine, we have the alcohol here.
Tenim el marc, tenim l'aiguardent.
L'aigua.
Aiguardent.
We have the schnapps.
Val? Tenim la reducció aquí.
The reduction here, and here we have the alcohol.
Ok, seguim. Ara sí, ara veurem un exemple de lo que farem demà, que és el buit.
Now we're going to see an example of what we're going to do tomorrow, cooking in a vacuum.
Es tracta d'un llenguado.
It's a sole.
Que, a banda de tot el procés de combinatòria del plat,
apart from all the combination of the different elements in the dish,
hi ha una part important que és el tractament del llenguado cuit, el buit, durant el servei, durant el moment en el restaurant, durant el procés del servei.
It's very important how to treat this sole when cooked in a vacuum before it's served.
El llenguado és un peix allargat que té els lloms prims.
The sole is kind of a long fish with, flat fillets. You know what it is.
I el que fem...
That one we know.
El que fem és convertir aquests lloms, és a dir, desespinar el llenguado i tornar a reproduir el llenguado sense les espines.
So we debone the sole and then we reproduce the sole again without the bones.
Per tal de tenir millor textura, és a dir,
so as to get a better texture.
Per tal de que les dues peces s'uneixin per la coagulació de la proteïna durant la cocció.
So that both pieces get joined. Per què?
Per la coagulació.
For the coagulation.
És a dir, no els ajuntem amb transglutaminasa, sinó que ells mateixos queden units.
So
per la pressió del buit i per la cocció.
So they join together because of the pressure of the vacuum, not because of transglutaminase. Thank you.
No utilitzem la
No, we don't use that. We
sinó
use the vacuum pressure. Yeah.
Bé, això és el que és tècnicament el buit, però el plat pretén reproduir els colors i els sabors del Mediterrani.
That's what it was technically, but this dish wants to reproduce the flavors, colors and
Sabors del Mediterrani.
flavors of the Mediterranean.
Ja. I per això utilitzarem el fonoll,
And that's what we're going to use fennel,
que en traiem el suc del fonoll salvatge,
we extract the juice of the wild fennel.
li donarem densitat amb agar-agar, és a dir, escalfem el suc del fonoll amb agar-agar.
So we're going to give it some density using aragara. Thank you. Aragara.
Okay. Suc de fonoll, agar, amb calent.
Agar, it's warm, it has to be.
Amb calent, té densitat, això ho
It
deixem
has
refredar.
density because it's warm, you let it cool down.
I després hi afegim oli d'oliva, ho muntem amb oli d'oliva.
And then you add olive oil.
Com que ja té densitat, absorbeix bé l'oli d'oliva i fem una emulsió estable.
Because it's already dense, it absorbs the olive oil very well.
Això mateix ho fem amb pinyons, amb taronja,
Emulsion.
amb bergamota
You do it with pine nuts, with
i olives.
orange, olives and bergamot.
Sí. Això és el llenguado que el salem amb una salmorra.
This is a
10% de sal sobre l'aigua.
10% salted, 10%
Ja, durant 4 minuts.
for 4 minutes.
Ajuntem els dos lloms del llenguado
So we put them together, we join them,
i els posem a la bossa de buit.
and then we introduce them in the bag, the vacuum bag.
I els posarem a coure a 55 graus
And they're going to cook 55 degrees,
durant
at 55 degrees for
4 minuts.
4 minutes.
Això és el moment en el servei, en el restaurant.
This
Tenim
is in the restaurant.
els termostats incorporats a les taules de treball del
We have
restaurant.
the thermostats that are, attached to the working tables.
Mentre es cou el llenguado, fem uns petits caramels d'oli d'oliva.
And while the salt cooks, then we do the little caramels of olive oil.
Deixem caure una gota d'oli d'oliva sobre un caramel calent i la mateixa llei de la gravetat fa que baixi i que es tengui.
So we drop one drop, or a drop of olive oil on the caramel, and the law of gravity puts it in the right
Han
place.
quedat junts els dos lloms del llenguado.
So both fillets stick together.
I a última hora, quan surt ja de la bossa, el passem per la brasa de llenya d'alzina just per donar un cop de perfum
Ho treus de la
i de
bossa.
cocció a l'exterior.
Ho treus de la bossa.
Sí.
Ho treus de la bossa. And when it's out of the bag, then després, què has dit després?
I el passem per la brasa.
Okay, and we grill it.
Ja. Això són les salses emulsionades.
These are the emulsions, emulsified sauces,
Col·locades també, igual que en el cas del llenguado, és una seqüència
and it's also sequence,
d'oli d'oliva, d'olives,
olives,
col·loquem el caramel d'oli d'oliva
the caramel with the olive
sobre del
oil,
llenguado, pinyons, col·loquem
pine
pinyons,
nuts,
taronja, pell de taronja,
orange skin,
bergamota, flor de bergamota i fonoll, flor de fonoll,
and fennel flower.
coincidint cada suc amb cada producte.
Every oil, coincides with
Aquest
its
seria el llenguado tallat per la meitat
product.
tallat per la meitat.
So
Veieu
this is
com...
cut in the middle.
Lo important en aquest
By
cas
half.
és que
By
hem
half.
aconseguit coure'l a la temperatura ideal en què no ressequem el producte.
So we've managed to cook it at the ideal temperature, so it's still moist.
Si hem
It retains its moisture.
si hem de coure el llenguado tota l'estona a la brasa,
Because if we have to grill it all the time,
per arribar a aquests 50 graus a cor de producte, aplicarem molta temperatura a l'exterior, amb la qual ressecarem i deshidratarem els...
because if we apply the 50 degrees when grilling it, then the exterior of the sole is going to get harder, no? El de fora se farà més dur, no?
Quedarà deshidratat,
And it
perdrà
will
propietats
dehydrate.
organolèptiques, perdrà textura.
And it's going to lose texture and taste.
És per això que utilitzem el buit, perquè és molt més respectuosa amb el producte.
And that's why we use the vacuum, because it respects the product much better. It retains its
Encara que després li
inner
donem un punt de
essential
brasa, un punt de
qualities.
planxa, combinem tècnica,
even though we combine techniques, touch of grill or barbecue.
el buit ens serveix per ajustar la temperatura de cocció i després la brasa o la planxa per donar mallar, donar color, donar la part, diguem-ne, visual de l'acabat del plat.
So the vacuum helps us to adjust it to the best texture, and then we do combine it. We use the grill or barbecue to brown it, to give it the last touch.
Okay. La idea del paisatge ens ha servit per desenvolupar aquest plat, per desenvolupar la gamba,
So the idea of landscape has
i hem utilitzat la tècnica per aconseguir aquest fi. No?
has been the one that we've used to come up with this dish, and it's been the technique that inspired us.
La idea del paisatge també ens ha portat a desenvolupar aquest snack, que és la benvinguda que donem en el restaurant. El primer que rep el client quan s'asseu a taula
And
és això que farem ara. No?
And precisely inspired in landscape, we came up with this snack that is what we serve at the restaurant to welcome our customers.
Fem un caramel
We make a caramel
quan està a 150 graus,
and at
traiem del
50
foc
degrees we remove it from the heat
i afegim olives deshidratades
and we add dehydrated olives
i vinagre de Jerez reduït.
and vinegar from Jerez reduced.
Això ho deixem caure sobre un silpat, un plàstic, una placa de plàstic.
We
dur.
drop it on a sheet,
És una silicona.
on a plastic board,
Yeah.
silicone,
Ho estirem,
and then we stretch it.
és una manera pràctica de tenir a punt doncs, petites peces.
It's a practical way of having little pieces ready.
Ja. Trenquem aquestes peces i les guardem per poder ser més àgil al servei. Quan això ho hem de fer, ho fem al moment pràcticament.
We break them, to have them ready when we need them, because we do this.
Estem fent olives caramelitzades. No?
We're trying to make caramelized olives.
Calentem una peça d'aquestes
Then we warm one of these
i
pieces
aconseguim
up,
tenir una capa molt fina de caramel d'oliva verda
and then we get this very thin layer of caramelized olive,
i
green
agafem
olive.
cada oliva una per una i l'anem passant per aquest caramel
And then, we coat the olives in this caramel, one by one.
Quan això està calent, de seguida queda fred
warm,
I queda dur.
Because it very quickly gets cool
després,
and hard.
Ho servim, ho pengem d'un bonsai d'olivera.
Oh, so nice. And it hangs on a bonsai, olive bonsai.
I quan arriben els clients els hi servim aquest bonsai amb les olives caramelitzades perquè les vagi a collir les olives.
So when the customers come, we serve this bonsai so that they can pick.
És una manera de donar la benvinguda I sobretot de dir que estem en el Mediterrani, que estem en una zona d'oliveres, estem a Catalunya, estem a Girona.
It's a way of saying, welcoming our customers and also to say we are in the Mediterranean, we are in Catalonia, where olive trees are a landmark.
Okay. Bueno, jo per avui he acabat. Jo voldria, sobretot, donar les gràcies. Per mi és un gran honor estar aquí.
For me, it's a great honor to be here.
Ha estat molt interessant poder conèixer els laboratoris de Harvard aquest matí.
It's been really interesting to get to know the labs in Harvard.
I el que vull sobretot és agrair l'oportunitat que m'heu donat de poder estar aquí I agrair la vostra presència I la vostra atenció.
And I would like to thank you for giving me this chance to be here and thank you for all being present here.
So, thank you. So, assuming that everyone is not hungry, there's time for some questions. And I guess we have two people with roving microphones, one in the back and one in the front. And if anyone has questions, this is a good moment. There's a question over there.
Hi, I'd like to know if cooking at low temperatures can also kill bacteria so that the food is safe to eat.
Les temperatures baixes només les apliquem quan es tracta de cocció immediata.
Low temperatures, we only apply them when we use immediate cooking, direct cooking.
Quan hem de fer precoccions,
when we have to do pre-cooking,
pugem la temperatura.
Then we raise temperatures.
Precisament per evitar problemes higiènics.
Precisely to avoid problems with poisoning.
There's a question in the front.
In keeping with the theme of this class, in terms of phase changes, when you cook to a certain temperature in the middle, are you trying to achieve a certain temperature, a phase change, a taste, or texture? And do you monitor this with various experiments?
Quan apliques la temperatura en el mig del producte, el que vols aconseguir és textura, gust, què és el que vols fer?
Sobretot textura I gust.
Mainly texture and taste.
Busquem la temperatura ideal per cada producte, és a dir, la relació o la proporció adequada entre temperatura I temps, pensant en cada producte.
You have to find the best relationship, the adequate relationship between time and temperature, so that it retains the qualities of the product.
Mm-hmm. Good. So I have a question there. Actually, there are two questions over there.
Hi, I have a question about your aroma of earth. It's a two-part question. Sorry. So When you're collecting the
pregunta
dirt
sobre
for the
el
earth
aroma.
aroma,
Quan
is there a
agafes
particular place in Girona that you go to get it,
la
such
earth,
as when you visited as a
Ah,
child?
veu i et vas a
or,
un lloc en particular de
something
Girona
like
a
that. And
buscar-ho.
my second part is more scientific. If you've ever done or heard of a chemical analysis done on the aromas that you collect from that dirt.
Excuse me?
Oh, if he's aware or if he's done a chemical analysis on the aromas he collects in his rotovap from the
Si
earth.
has fet algun anàlisi químic dels aromes que tu reculls? Són dues preguntes.
La terra l'anem a buscar
the
en un
soil.
bosc molt proper al restaurant, és el bosc que nosaltres de petits passejàvem i buscàvem, quan vam fer això buscàvem l'aroma de la terra que teníem nosaltres a la memòria i per això anem a un bosc proper conegut per a nosaltres.
This soil or this earth, we get it from a wood that actually is very close to where we are, where we lived when we were kids, and that belongs to our childhood memories. That's where we get it from. And
Hem fet anàlisis de la terra
we have analyzed the soil.
i el que hem vist és que havíem de col·locar uns filtres en el rotovapor,
And we realized we had to,
microfiltres per evitar que passessin bactèries i que no poguéssim tenir cap problema amb el resultat.
we had to use some filters in the machine to avoid the bacteria so that the result was good.
Ja que treballem a temperatura molt baixa.
Because we work at very low
d'evaporació.
temperature of
Good.
evaporation.
So maybe there's one more question you can choose. I guess we can have more questions. There's a person right next to you, Naveen.
What do you cook for yourself on your days off?
Què cuines per tu els dies lliures?
Cuina la meva dona, que està aquí, que
My
cuina
wife.
millor que jo.
My wife, who cooks better than I cook, is the one who does.
Another one? We're still going?
I have a question about sous vide. So imagine you have a piece of meat and you vacuum it, you put it in the sous vide at 65 Celsius, let's say. If you cook it for 3 hours or 10 hours, just because the temperature is fixed, do they make any difference or not? And if they do, why do you think it does? Because the temperature in both cases do not exceed 65. The temperature is fixed all the time.
Si poses una peça en el
Sí.
This is a good question for our class.
canvia molt si el poses molt de temps o el deixes molt de temps allà o no.
Depèn de la peça, és a dir, depèn del tipus de carn. Normalment són carns que tenen coccions molt llargues. Depèn de la seva composició.
It depends on its composition. It usually is meat that is pretty long.
Clar, depèn del seu contingut amb teixit conjuntiu, és a dir,
It depends on its content of
de col·làgen.
its collagen.
Depèn del col·làgen que tingui, necessitarà més temps i temperatura, la temperatura quan més baixa sigui possible, la textura serà molt més
The
interessant.
lower the temperature, the more interesting the texture is going to be.
Sempre hi ha una equació que relaciona
There
la
is an
temperatura.
equation that correlates the temperature, and
Quan més baixa la
the
temperatura,
lower the temperature,
més s'ha d'allargar el temps.
the longer time you need.
And in fact, that equation is the equation of the week in this class
És la-
for week number
Aquesta és
5.
l'equació que necessitem per aquesta classe.
You have to wait for, I think it's week number 5, right?
És
That's right. It's week number 5. So you have to come
unitat
back.
número 5.
Other questions? Maybe one that this is a hearty crowd, so we'll keep going.
Cooking like this requires a great deal of precision. It's almost a scientific approach. It's very, very methodical and very, very precise. Yet most cooking is more sensory and very intuitive. So how do you balance those two opposing ends?
És cert que la cuina és intuïtiva, els cuiners som molt intuïtius.
It is true that cooking is definitely very intuitive and that cooks or chefs are very intuitive.
En canvi, els pastissers són molt precisos.
However,
Pastry chef.
the pastry chefs are very precise.
Ja. I aquesta és una aportació que ha fet en Jordi també en aquest triangle creatiu, en què ens hem adonat compte de que si som precisos tenim resultats molt més regulars, més estables.
And that's what Jordi has contributed with, that if we are more precise, then we get more regular results.
Sí. El que aconseguim amb aquesta precisió és regularitat.
So we come up with some kind of, it's more systematic.
Aconseguim que el llenguado surti sempre al punt, sempre.
So the salt will always be at the right
Sempre
point.
al punt. No depenem de que un cuiner el tingui un minut més a la
It
planxa.
doesn't depend on whether a cook,
Or forn.
puts the salt maybe a minute longer in the grill
I
or
espaci de
not.
cocció.
And then, it overcooks it.
Però sobretot el que aporta el buit, a banda d'aquesta cocció immediata, com per exemple el llenguado,
But mainly, its main contribution, apart from this kind of cooking like with the salt,
demà ho explicarem,
we'll talk about that tomorrow.
hi ha un altre gran avantatge que és la possibilitat de precoure, també amb molta precisió,
There's another advantage, which is the possibility of pre-cooking also with great precision,
i alhora pasteuritzar.
and also pasteurize. Thank you.
Poder coure, pasteuritzar, és a dir, baixar la temperatura de cop,
To be able to cook, so pasteurize, like drop temperature suddenly,
conservar
and then preserve
en fred,
in cold.
i en el moment en què l'hem de menester, regenerar
And when you need to use it, then to regenerate
a la mateixa temperatura que la de cocció
at the same cooking temperature
per acabar un plat com si estigués acabat just al moment.
to finish a dish as if it had just been made.
Un plat que poder té una cocció de 24 hores,
A dish that maybe needs to cook for 24 hours,
molt tendre, molt melós,
very,
molt gustós,
very tender, very tasty,
i acabat al moment amb una pell cruixent, com d'un garrí o d'un...
and then you can finish it at that very moment with the skin of a crunchy skin like that one of a suckling pig. Or
És a dir, que la cuina és intuïtiva, és cert, però quan és metòdica, barrejada amb la part intuïtiva de la creativitat, és la que al final...
so yes, cooking is definitely intuitive, but together with a method and precision makes it.
Inclús nosaltres hem
Even
arribat
better.
a establir un sistema creatiu en què tot té sentit en el plat i per tant busquem més aquesta relació directa entre els conceptes i conceptes que són propis de la nostra cuina per acabar articulant els plats.
So we've used this combination of elements in our the way we cook, which is intuitive and
Potser per explicar-ho millor.
let's
A
explain this a little
casa
better.
meva, a
At
casa,
home,
cuinem intuïtivament.
we cook intuitively.
Què hi ha a la nevera?
What's in the fridge?
Pa.
Put it
Cuina
together.
intuïtiva, és divertida també.
It's fun. It's fun too.
És divertida. Però en el restaurant
But in the restaurant,
som molt metòdics amb tot. Amb
we
les
need a method,
coccions i també
and we are
amb la
very
combinatòria.
systematic, and with the elements and how we combine them.
Cada element ha de tenir sentit en el plat.
Okay, each element has to make sense
En el plat, no?
on the dish,
Cada cosa hi és. Però
on the plate.
els elements del llenguado eren, per mi, la idea del Mediterrani.
So the elements
els colors.
regarding the salt, for me, had to do with the Mediterranean, the colors
Són els colors del
of
Mediterrani.
the Mediterranean.
el verd del fonoll,
the green of the
el
fennel,
verd pàl·lid de les olives,
the
de les
light green
oliveres,
of the olive
el
trees,
taronja dels
the
tarongers,
orange of the orange
la
trees,
bergamota dels
the
cítrics, de la llimona,
bergamot of the
I el-
citrus from the
i
lemon
el-
trees,
els pinyons, que són
and
els
the
pins.
pine nuts,
no?
which are our pines.
És a dir, que hi ha una reflexió prèvia. No?
So there is a previous reflection on all these elements.
Good. So I think that's an excellent note upon which to thank Joan for a wonderful lecture. So next week, so 1 week from today, the next lecture in the series is Bill Yossis, who's the White House pastry chef, who will show us something different.